All right, I think we can get started. We have 20-something participants, and I imagine the rest of the people will join us as they transition from the last session. I'm really excited that we were able to put together the CRA Virtual Summit this year. Even if it's virtual, we still get a chance to get together and learn and strategize and collaborate and continue to do really good work. My name is Karla Bachmann. I'm the Director of Financial Wellness at Sanchez. And with me today, I have two great community advocates, Joe Sanchez from Capital One and Felipe Pinzon from Hispanic Unity. Thank you for being with us. I'm going to let them introduce their roles and what their initial thoughts about collaboration versus competing in the community. So Joe, would you let us know what your role is at Capital One and how you promote collaboration?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I am Joe Sanchez, and I am on Capital One's Community Impact and Investment team. And I have the pleasure of being based here in South Florida and working with and supporting the work of many of the amazing community development organizations who are members of CRA SF and who have been in this conference. And I'll say, as a funder, collaboration is certainly important to us, and we really promote it in two ways. One is by absolutely being open to supporting and funding collaborative work when it's brought to us. And then the second way is, being a funder with sort of an overall view of different programs that are happening in several of our local markets, as well as nationally, trying to make those connections to drive collaboration when there are programs where we see the work can complement each other.
Thank you. And Felipe, will you share with us what is your role at HAF and how you promote collaboration versus competing in your role?
Thank you, Karla. Felipe Pinzon, as Karla said, with Hispanic Unity, been with the agency for the last 19 years, and my role today is Executive Director. Collaboration is, I believe, the best way for everyone that is participating in this call and everyone that is actually in the nonprofit sector to achieve broader social impact. That's why we believe in collaboration. There is no way Hispanic community can do it all. I mean, we don't have the expertise to do it all. We don't have the capacity to do it all, but there are no better ways, to actually achieve better impact than working with those who have the expertise, whether it is government agency or another nonprofit. That's why every single program Hispanic Community partners with 10, 15, 20 plus partners. We can talk about it, during the call.
That's great. Thank you, Felipe. So the session is supposed to be interactive as much as we can. You can put your questions and comments on the side. I think it goes better when you are able to ask questions or tips or advice based on the expertise. These are two very different takes on community collaboration, one from the founder's point of view with Joe and one from the nonprofit point of view with Felipe. But I'll get us started. And Felipe talked a little bit about why he thinks that collaboration is important. So I will ask Joe, why, from the point of view of a funder, collaboration is important?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, when we hear about nonprofit collaboration, it's really exciting for us as a funder, because it often means that there's an opportunity for deeper impact, the ability to reach a greater amount of people who may need the services or programs of this collaboration, the inclusion of different perspectives into the program design, and more capacity, which is always a nonprofit issue, more capacity to ensure successful implementation.
Yeah.
How about you, Felipe?
Well, besides, I guess, what I said before, broader social impact, I also believe, in efficiency. Our free tax preparation program, I guess, is the best example. We partner with other community based organizations so we can deliver services. That decreases, of course, the cost, of the entire program. We partner with higher ed institutions to deliver the training to more than 100 volunteers. Again, that decreases the cost as well, and we partner with IRS and other experts in the field so we can maximize our resources. So efficiency is part of why we do it and why it's important to do it. And also because we want to be effective, we want to be successful. And the best example for that is Hispanic communities youth development program. We partner with, at this point, about 20 different schools, public schools in Broward County. I mean, without them, we wouldn't be able to reach the hundreds of children we reach out to every single day.
Yeah. So they seem like complicated collaborations. I mean, you've given us two examples. One is VITA, which is across the county, quite large, and the one with you. So staying on that topic, what do you think are the key pieces of putting together such a collaboration for it to work through the years like you have been doing it?
I always say that there is one, there are so many ingredients, we could stay all day long talking about everything that is important, whether it's leadership, being intentional, but there is one that I really believe in, and is trust. I think that without trust is really hard to establish strong relationships and partnerships. So when we talk about VITA, in other programs, I guess the best example I can use is the Urban League of Broward County. We have been working together for the past 20 plus years, and it's because we built a strong relationship from the very beginning. That for us is extremely important. Again, being intentional as well is important. So when we sit at the table and the partners, have to be at the table as well. We have to have shared goals. I don't think that anyone should show up, at these meetings with a prescribed, set of goals. I think that is for all the partners that actually have to come up with those goals. So there are so many ingredients. Again, going back, I think that trust is number one for me.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about building that trust and all those ingredients, like you said, to put it together a good collaboration. So, Joe, I will ask you, based on your experience, what is the key to go from seeing groups compete to partnering as a successful coalition that presents services together?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'd like to also share an example, of a collaborative project that we've been a part of in South Florida, and kind of use it, in my response as sort of what has worked well, right? So Karla knows very well a program that we implemented called Micro Mentor South Florida. And it was a collaborative project that brought together a national program called Micro Mentor, which is a global small business mentoring program and online platform, with 3 local nonprofit community organizations in Miami, being Acciones, or now Ascendas, Branches, and Prospera. And the idea was to collaborate to build the network of entrepreneurs and mentors in Miami to further support micro businesses in accessing trusted guidance. And so, in thinking about, the question, Karla, that you asked, and, how do we, work to, what's the key to go from competitor to business partner? I think one of the keys is sort of keeping the big picture in mind. Felipe mentioned shared goals, and that's absolutely important. It's, for Micro Mentor South Florida, the big picture goal was connecting those entrepreneurs with mentorship opportunities. And certainly that was a goal that each and every partner involved saw was important. And so there wasn't a need to compete, because everyone realized that's importance and that's the bigger picture. And then I think the other thing that we certainly needed to keep in mind was that the role for every partner is different, and it and it looks different, and the program implementation is going to look different for every partner. And so again, it was important for us to think about the shared goals and have those shared goals and develop them together. But we didn't want to create a sense of competition with, you know, the way that we set goals and saying like each partner needs to do, you know, X, you know, or create a sense to where it's like someone got there first, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I may, Karla, and I forgot to mention this before, but I think that part of that is focus on what you do best, and the rest just let others do it, right? So uh, there are a few programs in the past that we were not the best at actually delivering services, you know, and there were many other organizations doing even better job than Hispanic community. So we said, let those organizations actually do what they do best, and let's focus on our own areas of expertise. And that's what we did. And today we collaborate with those organizations, you know, on helping those clients that initially were served by Hispanic community, but are now being served by them. And a couple of things that I can share with you about that is again, I have to talk about Urban Lead because that's the best example for us. We partnered to do Baira. I don't think that there is an intention to compete, you know, for services, but they also do something that we don't want to do because we believe they no one better than them, like IDA and other services. So we partnered with them actually, you know, so to ensure that they can provide those services. So at least it's recognizing, you know, what you should be doing and what others should be doing. And then instead of competing for those dollars that are out there, that are now are actually, you know, uh, not that many, then just let those organizations actually, you know, do their job instead of competing. Yeah.
Right. And I think that what you said was very important about trust. So I think that being humble enough as an organization and nimble enough to understand what you're good at and what you may have other partners that may be better at, and picking and choosing what you where you lead and where you follow is extremely important to create that big collaborations at the community level. And I think that, Joe, you probably as a funder can recognize these natural partnerships and solid collaborations in the community versus when people just or organizations just rally around, you know, like Felipe said, some money, just because, you know, sometimes it's hard to get. Um, I have had the privilege to be a funder myself, and I think that that was very important for me to see where the goal was. And as I hear you speaking, I know that maybe competing to see how many more people we can serve together is not a bad competition, you know, goal for a collaboration. But we have a question, and I think is very much for the time. Felipe, you did say that you know, it's hard to get dollars, yes, sometimes. And they want to know how the pandemic has affected the collaboration. How are you seeing that the situation right now has affected our ability to collaborate?
Well, in 2020, when the pandemic hit us, I guess we have to reinvent ourselves. If I use examples, you know, like the free tax preparation, I have to tell you, at March 16, 2020, we stopped working together, right? I mean, we didn't even know exactly how we were going to deliver services to clients. We ended up in partnering with an organization out of the Bay Area, and finally we conducted, you know, some pre-tax preparation services. But in 2020, it was extremely hard, I have to tell you. That changed towards the end of the year, of course, because we kept thinking about how we were going to deliver services in 2021. And happy to say that we opened 10 sites, you know, 10 by that size. Some of them are drop-offs, some of them are online, but we initiated those conversations and partnerships again with those organizations. So what we did is that we reach out and just being honest. This is what we can do. This is how we have to do it. This is what we can bring to the table. We need this from you, and then just let partners actually, you know, also tell us, I mean, how we can do business together. So it's having open lines of communication. We are reinventing ourselves, as I said just said, that's how it's changing, but it's impacting the relationship. Same thing with public schools. I mean, school principals don't want actually third parties, on site at this point. We are still conducting business online. But now we see that actually school principals are inviting Hispanic community back to the schools. We are going to phase 2. So it's just keeping that, those channels of communication open. So we reach out on a regular basis, see how they feel about it, and then propose ideas, that actually are win-win for those that are involved in the partnership, right? So, but it's impacting our service delivery model. What you have to do is, again, reach out, be honest, bring something to the table, and propose something that actually is a win-win situation, right?
Mm. I want to get a little deeper on that, because you did say, that you have to be very creative. And I believe that creativity has been the key to surviving and thriving in this environment. And because the panel is about sharing, these tips and little things that other people may be still struggling and you have successfully accomplished. What's the internal process for you to come up with the ideas of who to call? You mentioned somebody in the Bay Area. What would you provide as an advice for organizations on how you put together your team and start looking outwards to see who else may complement things that you need help with?
Just give me, yeah. I'm sorry. This is the reality of today.
We're all
It's my
used to
daughter
that.
asking me a question about school. I'm sorry. The internal process, in terms of innovation and creativity, I think that we have allowed that. I mean, it's teamwork and collaboration, right? I mean, whether you do it with others or you do it internally, right? And creating the space for others actually to also be innovative and creative. But initially we didn't know how to do it, and we started conversations with funders, including Citibank, right? I mean, actually they were the ones establishing the relationship and funding, Code of America out of California. And then we started conversations with them. I have to tell you that initially it was tough for us to think about doing this online and somehow putting at risk, people's confidential information, but we sort of figured it out. We came up with tools and internally and externally, of course, to be able to do it. We created protocols to make sure clients' information is always safe. And that's what we did in 2020, only online. We didn't do any drop off or any in-person services because we didn't feel it was safe for neither one, right? Staff or clients. That changed in 2021. We kept having those conversations internally. Again, this is collaboration, working, with our compliance team and safety manager, and came up with protocols and safety procedures to make sure that actually clients and staff are safe, not just a Hispanic community. Again, we're doing this drop-off model, not just at our location, but in partnership with community centers in Tamarack and other cities. So it's how they also, feel about doing it. I mean, what is that they're putting at risk and how they want to work with Hispanic community. So that's part of the process, and it's letting the staff that actually the frontline staff also come up with ideas on how to do it. And it's just for us to be able to provide the resources so they can do, the job they have to do for the clients.
That's great. Joe, I will ask you the same thing. How does the bank sees their role putting together collaborative efforts to overcome, all the challenges in the pandemic?
Yeah, so I'll speak, specifically with Micro Mentor. We put together this collaborative initiative in 2019, and the intention was going into 2020, we were going to build off of what we accomplished in the first year, off of what we learned in the first year. And we were going to, it was a pilot program that we did in Miami, and we were going to expand it to other markets. We were going to include more partners locally. And we are going to do, more live in-person events, which, as I say that, it just sounds crazy now, right? And we all met in the beginning of 2020 and laid out our plans and our goals. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we absolutely had to just be open to pivoting and to listening to each other and understanding that this may not be the priority right now. The nonprofit organizations may not have the capacity for this right now, and it may not be what the community needs or wants at this moment. And so I think we, all of us certainly had to be flexible and pivot. And, in this case, we put it on pause, right? And we said, okay, we'll come back to it when the time is right. And in some ways, we were able to continue the program. We were able to, to leverage the resource of Micro Mentor as it made sense during the pandemic for small businesses. But we certainly did not want to push collaboration in a time where it may have been more difficult in this certain situation.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
If I may, and I'm so glad that actually Joe representing funders is part of the panel. And if I tie that, or if I connect that with the pandemic, I have to say that 2020, the collaboration and partnership was more with funders. That's what we did for about 3 months. I guess from March all the way through June or July. It's just reaching out to every single funder to share what Hispanic community was doing to address the health and financial crisis. But more than that was actually to redesign every single project. And that's what we have done together. And if I start reflecting of what we did in 2020, I believe that that's what we have done, over the years, is that it's not just a service delivery provider funder relationship. To me, it's a partnership. And I'm so proud actually to say that that's what Hispanic community's focus has been over the last several years. Is more than establishing, a relationship with the funder. It's just a partnership with them. So whether it was financial institutions like Capital One or government agencies like the Children's Services Council, happy to say that we reached out to every single one, and we came up with models that made sense not just to us, the clients, but also to the funders, right?
Yeah, I think that I agree with both of you. The pandemic and the physical restrictions have been a challenge for community collaborations. You don't look at it the same way, and it may be more of a one-on-one. But again, it's extremely important for us to reach out to other partners locally and see how we can offer a combination of services, even if we don't directly provide all of them. Joe, of course, I had a list of questions, but the questions in the chat are so much better. And everybody wants to know how the funders think and what they say. So I have a few questions for you, Joe. And this one in particular is very interesting because I always wonder, as much as our funders promote and push and ask for collaboratives, if they collaborate themselves with other funders, with other banks in your case, for a bigger impact. So do you do that at Capital One? And if you do, how?
Yeah, so, certainly we can be better at it. I'll definitely say that.
We all can at everything.
And one thing, funders do communicate with each other. And, I relocated to South Florida in the beginning of 2020, and the intention was to really develop those local relationships with all stakeholders, not just the nonprofit organizations, but the other funders in the market, the other community stakeholders. Where I was previously based in DC, we had sort of a bankers group of our CRA kind of officers. And so we certainly communicated with each other. But certainly there could have still been better as well. The one thing we wanted to make sure not to do is to get in a nonprofit way. So like, for us, we're happy to, provide, funding for a program that maybe our name isn't, top of the t-shirt, and support those efforts and be flexible with where, we fund, and sort of support efforts, collaborative efforts, even though we're, maybe not the only bank that's doing it, and maybe even if we're not, the major funder of it. So, I would say currently, that's one of the ways in which we do it, is we don't get in an organization or a collaborative efforts way with our funding, and sort of limit it or restrict it to just being us.
Mm-hmm. So are there other bank collaborations? I can think of one, like Bank On is a national movement where banks get together and help. And how do organizations have access to those? And either one of you, if you know Felipe, of any groups of funders that work together and how you get access to those, or Joe?
Well, in Broward County, we have the Funders Forum, and I believe other counties have a similar approach. So government agencies in the United Way and other key funders, whether it's DCF or the school district, they get together on a quarterly basis. They have conversations about community priorities and community needs, and even data sharing as well, right? And how they can make the lives of nonprofits easier, if you will. So they're having those conversations, and they reach out on a regular basis to service delivery providers to us, or find out what our needs are. So that's what we have in Broward County happening.
So if somebody doesn't know, or they don't get invited because they don't know about, how do you advise them to reach out? I mean, is it on their website? What would be your advice for them to get in touch with these groups that already are working on community?
In that case is closed doors. It's just main funders in Broward County, and they reach out, when they need to get some more information from organizations like Hispanic Community or others. But it's just that's at least happening, and what they're trying to do is, having conversations about using databases or issues in our community that they have to address, or approach to issues that they should actually, implement across the board. But it's a closed group, the one in Broward County. We don't even have access to it unless we get invited, to one of those meetings.
Okay. I think that's probably part of the issue that people face, is they don't even know where to get started, but at least we know that it's not something that and can share at this time. So when putting together a collaboration, and we touched a little bit on this, ensuring that you have the right people at the table is extremely important. So from Joe's perspective, when you invite other nonprofits to work on a particular project, how do you ensure that the right person is on the table? Do you usually start with the directors or the frontline staff, or is there a mix? And I will ask the same then to Felipe. How do you ensure that you're sending the right staff so that it works?
Yeah, I'll say, as Felipe said before, like it's really all about communication. And one thing that we, try to do with our community partners is just have regular communication, and communication, just, outside of just, what we're funding, but sort of understanding the full level of their work, and their engagement of the community, so that we can really start to think about ideas, and we can make connections as we are talking to other organizations, or involved in other kind of initiatives, so we can make those connections. And that's really the way that MicroMentor South Florida came about. It came about by having those open communications, by getting in the sandbox with our nonprofit partners, and making a connection between conversations being had at the national level with MicroMentor, and at the local level with these small business service partners. And so it's certainly important to involve leadership in those initial conversations and make sure that it, aligns with their vision. And in really planning it out, it's really important to involve the direct service staff because they really are able to share their knowledge and their experience to what's really going to work. So I'd say it's both at different levels and a lot of times together.
Yeah, I will agree. And I will then go a little bit deeper just because I know about the Micro Mentors project in particular. It was a multi-day training and brainstorming sessions with the staff. So maybe we can share a little bit more about how the project was conceptualized and what you put together, through the year for it to keep going and to have different opportunities to bring different people to be part of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we started with an ideation session, and Micro Mentor led that. Capital One did not believe that. We were certainly involved in it. And all of the partners who, we felt where this would align and who we'd had conversations with were involved and they participated. And I actually was not at the initial ideation session, but I've seen all the work that came out of it. And, so many ideas were shared. And then that took us into our real planning sessions. Again, where we got, those ideation sessions for the most part, they, really involved the leadership of the organizations, and the planning sessions then brought in, of course, the direct service staff as well. And again, Micro Mentor and the nonprofit organizations, really led the planning of it and really led in devising what the overall goals would be.
Want to download an app? Skype?
We have to get used to it. It's been a year pretty soon. So I guess I thought about it and I have thought about that for some time, and I believe is case by case. In some instances, we're trying to create new relationships and new partnerships, and all we need is champion, right? And sometimes that champion happens to be their CEO, right? I mean, many instances. So that may require initially the leadership of those organizations to agree on working together. But in many other instances, and I believe for the most part, I mean, there are so many other relationships that have been established and have been working, well for some time. I believe actually not even directors, in many instances is frontline staff that actually can move those relationships to the next level by sharing ideas on how they can actually refer clients, right, without or ensuring that they don't get lost, in the process, or just sharing ideas on how to better serve those clients is if they're hearing from them, same clients actually telling them, how they want to receive services, what services they should be receiving. So I guess it's case by case. I have maybe a good example, that was in 2019 for what you guys are sharing about the mentorship program in Miami. I don't know if you guys use human-centered design research, actually to do some of that, but that's the approach we used back in 2019. We partnered with more than 10 different organizations, including the school district and funders, and we launched something we call the Learning Cafe that actually came up not even from staff. Clients told us, what they wanted, right? And then we had actually staff, frontline staff listening to them and then sharing ideas with leadership. Then we all got together and we just sort of started, brainstorming ideas and ended up with something that we call now the Learning Cafe, which is a friendly environment for actually immigrants to learn the language, right? That doesn't look like a classroom. It looks more like a living room where they can have a cup of coffee and at the same time learn the language. So I guess it's case by case, but I know the instances you want maybe the higher ed institution to partner with you, and you don't have anyone actually, you have not established the relationship yet. So maybe you have to use leadership actually to sort of open that door, right? And then let frontline staff and other management staff, I guess, move it, forward.
Right. I think that you said a couple of things that are very, very important. There are partnerships to be established with the community as well. And I love that you brought that idea. A lot of our staff at branches are certified human-centered designers. And it's extremely important to understand how to provide services and assemble these kind of relationships. Because if you think about it, participants also compete for services that are limited. So there is a little bit of competition and a desire for collaboration at the community level and the funding level, organization to organization. And so it is very important that we understand from the point of service view, what is needed to really move the needle. And I think that that is what gets the best financial support from our funders. And so, Joe, we wanted to also ask you if funders welcome to be solicited, let's say, for financial support when the collaborations are already in the community and they believe that they have something to offer. And not from your capital point of view, Capital One point of view, but as a funder, how do you think that collaborations that are already established could go about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, different funders will have their point of view on it. I'm not sure all of them will support collaborations. I think many are very open to it. I think, for the most part, we, understand how important collaborations are. And we also understand, how it can really, drive efficiencies and capacity wise help to drive greater impacts because there's more capacity. And so, I think, for organizations, for collaborations that are approaching a funder, I think it's important first to do sort of that initial research. Is this something that, is explicitly something that the funder is not open to? But as long as, there's not, a major statement that says we will not support this, then absolutely, I think most funders would be open to that as long as it aligns with their general philanthropic giving priorities.
So there is a space, I think, for I think most funders are looking for innovation, and it comes from the community up. So I think that most organizations are still trying to figure out how to establish that communication, and again, stop competing so much and maybe collaborating, especially when the dollars are limited around the community. So I heard we're coming up to the end in here, and I wanted to recap on a couple of important words that I heard, and then open for questions if anybody else. I mean, the questions have been coming. I think sometimes you answer them just by your statements, but if you have any other questions, post them on the chat. But to wrap up, I wanted to give you the chance to give us your best advice for collaborating versus competing. And we heard a couple of things like trust, finding a champion within your organization. And I think, Felipe, you will agree that we have to find a champion within the funding community as well. Ideation, human-centered design, really having the community that we are serving at the point of, in the middle of everything that we are designing and what we are trying to do. I also heard about data. So it's very important if you're supposed to use the same data or not the same data. Out of all of these different things that we went through today, what would be the message that you want to leave most people with, that you have learned is the most important thing to collaborate?
Do you want me to go first, Joe?
Sure.
I think that it has to be real. And when I say that is you intentionally have to try to collaborate. And I guess what I'm trying to say, it cannot be just because funders or the community is asking you to do it. You have to believe that by working with others, you will be able to achieve greater impact. And if you really believe in that, then you can also recognize that you cannot do it all. And if you get to that point, well, you have made so much progress, then you can start brainstorming ideas about who can help you actually, meet your clients' needs. And then you will start reaching out to others. I believe a plan in place is extremely important. And that's what we're trying to do at Hispanic Community. Where is that we're going this year? What is the strategic plan calling us for? And then if we have that clear, not just at the leadership level, but actually sharing that across the agency, so people will feel free to actually start to reach out to others to establish relationships. But when it's not intentional, I guess it's way more difficult to do it. That's I guess my biggest takeaway, from all years doing this work. And the second one is, if you're ready to do it, try to establish a strong relationship and make sure your team knows that you guys have to make a huge investment in terms of time and resources, because true collaboration requires time, communication, resources. It's a huge investment that it pays off, by the way. It pays off, but it's a huge investment. So be ready for it. I'm so glad that we work with so many other organizations, and we see, the results of that every single day on how we serve our clients and how they're better off, after receiving services. So those could be my best recommendations, to the group who joined us today, Karla.
Good, we'll take those. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I loved what you said, Felipe, about it has to be real. I totally agree with that. And I think, as a funder, when we see organizations collaborating, it's, fantastic. We love that. But at the same time, we don't want to drive collaborations just for the sake of, getting grant dollars, right? Or else, the impacts won't be there. And so I think, it is really important that it be real and it be natural. And I think, a lot of collaborations, they really come out of communication and, partners just talking to each other around the shared community development goals. And, then ideas will come. Then, there we'll all recognize, synergies and how to get there and start to develop, programs, and it becomes this actual collaborative initiative. And that's a lot of times the way that they're developed, very, organically, stemmed from, communication around shared goals. And, just to, give my final thoughts, I want to double down on the importance of collaboration, even though we recognize that in this environment where we're still very virtual in a lot of ways, not in person, it's hard to do that. But when Janice Shope spoke this morning, she shared the infographic on the model of creating healthy communities, and it included basically every kind of local stakeholder, right? And for me as a bank, we fell into two of the categories, right? Like as a funder and as a financial institution. And so I think that the importance and the energy around collaboration is greater than ever, especially given, what we've seen around the issues of racial inequality and disproportionate economic and health impacts of COVID on communities of color. I think it's just really at the forefront of our community development conversations, which I think can drive some really amazing collaborations.
That is great. We do have a few more minutes, so I'm going to try and squeeze in one more question about data collection. So I think that for collaboratives and for funders, it's equally important to demonstrate the impact and the success of those collaborations.
Right.
But what we have seen is that when you put together groups like Felipe was sharing with us, where not everybody brings the same to the table, one of the disparities is that some of the smaller organizations that do the same amazing work have a harder time with data collection. Maybe they don't have the money or the resources to have sophisticated softwares. So how do you collaborate with people to show the collective impact where structurally they are not built to do that? I'll ask Felipe, based on your experience, how you collaborated with smaller organizations and lift them up to be able to have that kind of collaboration. And then Joe, if you have an example of how you support that as well, it would be great.
I mean, I have to use the same bite example, I guess, because in that project, we outsource some of the work we do with a Haitian serving organization here in Broward. Again, we know we don't have the same reach. You know, they have a connection we don't, so that's why we partner with this organization, the Community Access Agency, and we know they're way smaller than us. I mean, but they can do fantastic job, right? I mean, and they do it. And totally agree with you. They don't have the resources, not just to collect data, analyze data, and even report it out, right? And forget about many other things. We thought about it 2-3 years ago, and we said, this is a relationship that we have to cultivate. And by that, we mean, let's start investing, not just to get the numbers we need to report to whether it is the CSE or the IRS or the community, but let's make an investment so they can actually strengthen their foundation in terms of data collection, being able to advertise their services, running their program. It's not just here it is the money, so you can actually run a couple of sites, you know, for Hispanic community, and then get us the number we need, because we have to meet. But I know is what exactly you guys need so you can deliver those services successfully, right? So it's having that honest conversation, and then when you open those communication channels, they will tell you we don't have the money to buy the supplies. We don't have the money to pay for site coordinator. We don't have the money for this. So it's just having those conversations, and that is also for data, because that's how you started this question. So we have been making, of course, not that big, of course, but they are investments still, you know, in the organization, so they can produce the results, and at the same time being able to collect the data we need so we can continue the relationship. But yes, they struggle with that, as we do as well, believe it or not. Even though we are now a mid-sized nonprofit, we are all struggle collecting and reporting data, right? Think about that. But it's hard. I have to tell you, it's not an easy issue to resolve. And doesn't mean that by Hispanic community investing in them, the issue is resolved, because it's way far from actually being resolved. They still have to work on it. It's just that we have to recognize that that's a challenge those organizations face, and that we have a role to play, you know, in
Make progress. Great. How about you, Joe? How do you observe this challenge or try to, you know, level the playing field?
Yeah, absolutely. Data is definitely important for, you know, measuring impacts. And I think, you know, for us, we recognize that there are always, you know, capacity challenges at nonprofit organizations, and that the direct program services are really a priority. And there's not always data collection staff or data collection software. And so, you know, for instance, with the Micro Mentor initiative, the data that we collected and used to measure our progress was data that was being collected by Micro Mentor, which is an online platform which had a system for it. And it wasn't perfect data, but it's the data that we had. And so that's what we used to not create sort of that additional burden. And I think, you know, another way That's we sort of recognize this and try to help address the challenges by also being open to supporting technology that nonprofits want to acquire to be able to better measure impact data. We've done that in some cases. It's not something that, you know, when we have a partner and they, you know, we have conversations and they're addressing, you know, they're talking about that issue, it's certainly something that we're open to help supporting.
Yeah, I think that the micromentors is a perfect example. This project came with the data software to do the reporting. So any organization, I mean, you still need to use time and effort from the staff, but you didn't have to invest on any particular software in order to demonstrate impact. The project itself came with the idea of how to collect the data, and I think that's a very respectful way from a funder to bring a project where everything that was needed to operate was provided, and that brings a very generous opportunity for organizations of any size to be able to actively participate if they wanted to. So thank you both, Felipe and Joe. I'll give our participants another 4 minutes to transition to the main room. Thank you so much for sharing the ideas this afternoon. And we'll see you next year.